Teresa's second chance. Teresa's second chance. 3,632 words. Teresa had once believed in fairy tales, the kind where love conquered all, where happy endings were sealed with a kiss. She had believed Ivan was her prince, even when he began to come home late, even when the warmth in his voice hardened into ice, even when the baby growing inside her felt less like a gift to be cherished and more like a secret she had to protect. On the night it ended, she had begged Ivan to come home. Just one evening together. One memory of what they used to be. He came, reluctantly. He smiled, touched her stomach, whispered a hollow, "I love you." Then his phone buzzed, and she saw the name. Rachel. He left her to meet his mistress, speeding down slick roads, drunk on lust and carelessness. She followed in her car, broken-hearted and desperate. But she never made it. The car flipped over the guardrail, tumbling into darkness. The last thing she felt wasn't the impact. It was betrayal. And then, silence. When her eyes opened again, air filled her lungs, warm, scented with roses. Music drifted softly in the background. Her pulse quickened. A restaurant. Candlelight. Rose petals scattered across the floor. And in front of her, Ivan, kneeling. A velvet box in his hand, the diamond inside catching the light. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. She was back. The day Ivan proposed. "Teresa," he said smoothly, every word polished, every smile rehearsed. "Will you marry me?" The restaurant hushed. Diners leaned forward, waiting for her tears, her joy, her surrender. But Teresa didn't move. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of a young woman seated at a nearby table, her posture too poised, her gaze too sharp to be accidental. Rachel. She looked like just another patron, but Teresa knew better. In her past life, Rachel had been the shadow at the edge of everything. Sweet smiles that cut like knives, whispers that poisoned friendships, a hand always reaching for what wasn't hers. Even now, years before the betrayal unfolded, Rachel was here, watching, waiting, planning. The air in Teresa's lungs felt heavy, but her heart was steady. This was her chance. She rose slowly, the legs of her chair scraping against marble, slicing through the silence. Ivan's smile faltered, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Ivan," Teresa said softly, her voice calm but unyielding. "No." The single word dropped like a stone into still water, shattering the room. Murmurs erupted. Forks clattered. Even the violinist stopped playing. Ivan blinked. "What do you mean, no?" His voice was low, sharp, not meant for others to hear. "I cannot accept," she said. "This isn't right for me. I want a life that's mine, not one where I disappear into someone else's shadow." Her words rang out, clear and certain, silencing the whispers for a heartbeat. From across the room, Rachel's lips curved into a faint smile. Not pity, not surprise, amusement, as if Teresa had just made herself far more interesting. Ivan's jaw clenched, wounded pride burning behind his eyes. "You'll regret this," he muttered. Teresa leaned just close enough that only he could hear. "No, Ivan." The mistake would be saying yes. And with that, she turned. Past the roses. Past his frozen smile. Past Rachel's calculating stare, which followed her all the way to the door. In her room, Teresa closed the letter slowly, her fingers trembling, but not from doubt, from awe. The university crest gleamed at the top of the page, the words clear as sunlight, "Congratulations. We are pleased to inform you of your admission into the College of Medicine." For a long moment, she simply sat there, clutching the paper to her chest, letting the truth settle in. Against all odds, against the whispers and the sabotage, against the weight of her past, she had done it. She was in. It should have been the happiest week of her life. But Ivan's shadow refused to leave her doorstep. The first bouquet arrived the very next morning. Dozens of roses, red and lush, their petals flawless. Teresa accepted them with a quiet nod to the delivery man, then placed them on her counter without a second glance. The fragrance filled the air, sweet, overpowering, suffocating. Later came the gifts. perfume in crystal bottles, jewelry boxes tied with gold ribbon, a handbag whose brand name spoke louder than its usefulness. They piled at her door, cluttering the space like promises she no longer believed. And then there was Ivan himself. She opened the door one evening to find him standing there, immaculate as always, holding a gift wrapped in silver paper. His smile was soft, disarming, the same one that had once unraveled her defenses. "I thought you might like this," he said, pressing the box into her hands. "Just something to remind you of me." Her fingers tightened around the wrapping, the weight of it solid, tempting. Once, it would have meant everything. Once, she would have cried and clung to him and believed. But not now. "Ivan," she said gently, her voice steady, "you don't need to do this." "Yes, I do." His eyes searched hers, and for a moment, there was something almost desperate in them. "Because I love you. Because I know you're just afraid. But I can make you happy, Teresa. If you'll just let me." For a heartbeat, the words scraped against her heart, like a knife pressed against an old scar. How easy it would be to surrender, to let herself fall into the dream again. But she remembered. She remembered the woman she once was, the wife who stayed awake at night, waiting for a man who never came home. The wife who swallowed betrayal after betrayal until it consumed her. The woman who had died with grief and betrayal in her heart. She placed the gift firmly back in his hands. "Happiness isn't something you can buy," she whispered, and she closed the door before he could answer. Still, Ivan persisted. She saw him leaning against his sleek car outside her building, watching her with unreadable eyes. She caught glimpses of him across the street near the library, his presence heavy as a shadow. The gifts didn't stop. The flowers didn't stop. His pursuit was relentless, almost suffocating. One night, Teresa sat on the edge of her bed, staring at a vase of roses wilting under the dim glow of her lamp. Their petals curled inward, browning at the edges, their fragrance heavy in the air. Once, she might have mistaken all of this for love. But not anymore. "If I hadn't died," she whispered into the quiet room, "I might have believed him. I might have thought all of this meant he cared." Her chest tightened, but her eyes remained dry. But I remember. She remembered every lie, every betrayal, every moment of heartbreak. And she remembered the way her future had been stolen from her. No bouquet, no promise, no charm would ever thaw her heart for Ivan again. She blew out the candle beside her bed, the room falling into darkness. And in that silence, her resolve glowed brighter than ever. Because this time, she wasn't just fighting to survive him. This time, she had a future worth protecting. Teresa sat quietly at her desk, the acceptance letter from the prestigious medical school still resting on top of her books. The joy she should have felt was dulled by the constant shadow of Ivan's persistence. He was everywhere, sending flowers, gifts, even appearing uninvited at her home. In her past life, such gestures would have shaken her heart. She would have believed in his sincerity, mistaking persistence for love. But now, no matter how dazzling the bouquets or expensive the surprises, her heart remained cold. She remembered too well the pain of being Ivan's wife, the endless efforts she poured into the marriage, the humiliation of his infidelity, the deep scars left by betrayal. What puzzled her most was not the persistence, but the reason. Why, after everything, did Ivan still chase her? In her first life, she had assumed ignorance. She thought he simply needed time to realize his love for Rachel, the woman he had always cherished. That was why she had let go and surrendered her place beside him. She had accepted that Rachel was his one true love. So why propose to her at all? The answer came unexpectedly, not to her, but to Rachel. Rachel had been working countless part-time jobs to save for her own studies. She waited tables in high-end restaurants, served drinks at expensive bars, and even catered at exclusive private gatherings. One evening, she was called to assist discreetly at a family banquet, not realizing it belonged to the powerful Ivanov family. She was asked to return a forgotten phone to a private room. The door was shut but not locked, and as she reached for the handle, hushed voices stopped her in her tracks. Inside, the family spoke freely, unaware of her presence. They spoke of Teresa, of her progress, of Ivan's insistence on securing her hand. And then the truth spilled out, chilling and vile. For generations, the Ivanov family had carried a curse, bound by a pact made long ago. Their wealth and power were secured through a blood price, the sacrifice of the first wife of every heir. Madness, accidents, mysterious deaths, each one a quiet offering to sustain the family's fortune. It had always been so. Rachel froze, her hands trembling around the phone. The heir must marry, but the first wife must perish. The curse was their secret, spoken only within the family. And suddenly, Teresa understood. Ivan did not chase her out of love. He pursued her because she was meant to be a shield, a vessel to bear the curse so Rachel could live untouched. He had chosen her, not for affection, not for companionship, but for death. Her chest tightened as the truth settled like a blade against her heart. She had never been loved, not then, not now. From the beginning, her fate had been decided. But this time, Teresa swore she would not play the sacrificial bride. Teresa finally understood. They had chosen her not out of love, not even convenience, but because she was disposable. An orphan. A girl with no parents, no siblings, no family who would search for her if she vanished from the world. No one would question if tragedy struck her life. No one would demand justice if her body was lowered into the ground too soon. The truth struck her like a blade to the chest. Ivan's pursuit, his flowers, his gifts, his tender words, all of it a lie. Not because he was incapable of love, but because her role had been decided long before she ever met him. She was meant to be the sacrifice. The thought nearly broke her. Nearly. But Teresa had already died once, and she refused to die again, not for their curse, not for their wealth, not for him. She gathered her few belongings and walked away before Ivan could tighten his net around her. It wasn't easy. She had no one to lean on, no powerful family name to shield her, no fortune to soften the weight of beginning anew. Every step forward felt like climbing uphill barefoot, and yet she never stopped moving. Teresa clutched her acceptance letter to medical school as if it were her shield against the world. At night, she scrubbed tables until her hands burned, her uniform heavy with the scent of grease and spilled wine. By day, she devoured textbooks, studied while waiting at bus stops, standing in crowded trains, even huddled in the dim storage rooms of restaurants where she worked. It was exhausting. It was lonely. It was relentless. And still, she pressed on, because Teresa Lang would no longer be anyone's sacrifice. Fate had a cruel way of circling back. Teresa had changed her city, her address, even her habits. Yet somehow, of all the faces she could run into, she found his. Ivan. He spotted her in the bustling restaurant where she worked, his gaze narrowing like a predator recognizing prey. Teresa's heart sank, a chill racing down her spine. She tried to keep her composure, but deep down, she knew running was no longer an option. When the shift ended, he was waiting. His words cut sharper than any knife. "You're nothing without me," he hissed, his lips curled into a sneer. "I could give you all the money in the world. Why degrade yourself in a place like this?" She tried to brush past him, but his hand shot out, fingers clamping around her wrist. He dragged her into a private room, the door slamming shut behind them. Teresa's chest tightened. The walls felt like they were closing in. She could smell the faint cologne on him, the same scent that once fooled her into believing he was tender, loving. Now it reeked of possession. "Stay calm, Teresa. You trained for this. You're not the same helpless girl anymore." Ivan leaned in, his voice low, dangerous. "You think you can run from me? You belong to me." His hand reached for her, his shadow blotting out the light. Panic surged through her veins, but beneath it, something fiercer stirred, defiance. No, not again. Never again. She braced herself. The lessons from her self-defense classes echoed in her mind, the stance, the focus, the strike. When his hand gripped her arm, she moved. Her knee shot upward with every ounce of strength she had, connecting hard with his middle. The air rushed from his lungs in a strangled grunt. His eyes widened, more from shock than pain. Before he could recover, she struck again, a blow straight to his chest. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then Ivan staggered back, his arrogance shattered, his body doubled over. Teresa's pulse roared in her ears. Her hands trembled, but she didn't let herself hesitate. She bolted for the door, flinging it open and fleeing into the night, her lungs burning, her throat tight with unshed tears. She never looked back. That night, Teresa swore never to return to that establishment again. The memory of his hands on her skin, the way he spoke of her like property, seared itself into her soul. I won't let him cage me again. I won't. But she also knew Ivan's power stretched far beyond his fists. His family's wealth, their connections dangerous, suffocating. One wrong move could mean disaster. So she grew cautious, careful. She laid low, hiding her steps, building her life in silence. Because Teresa Lang had been marked disposable once, but now she was a survivor. And this time, no one, not even Ivan, would write her ending. Years passed. The frightened young woman who once fled into the night was gone. In her place stood Dr. Teresa Lang, one of the youngest, most respected pediatric surgeons in the country. The world saw her as brilliant, precise, unshakable. Colleagues marveled at the way her hands never trembled on the operating table, the way her voice soothed frantic parents, the way she seemed to carry hope in her very presence. But only Teresa knew the truth. Behind every steady breath was a ghost. Behind every calm smile was a scar. I never got to hold my child, she thought, sometimes in the quiet moments between surgeries. Never got to hear a first cry or whisper a lullaby. That ache, it never left. It never will. It was that loss that drove her. That relentless ache became her compass. Every time she cradled a newborn into safety, every time she stitched life back into a fragile body, it was as if she was reaching across time and fulfilling the promise of the child she had lost. Every incision, every suture, every miracle in the oar whispered the same vow. This life will not slip away. Not on my watch. The halls of the hospital echoed with her footsteps, but in her mind she sometimes heard the echoes of the past, Ivan's sneer, the sound of the door slamming shut, the shudder of her own breath as she escaped. You're nothing without me. But now, standing in the sterile glow of an operating room, masked and gowned, scalpel in hand, she would answer him in silence. I am everything you said I couldn't be. I am more than the fear you left me with. I am more than the girl you tried to break. Parents called her an angel. Patients drew her clumsy crayon portraits, calling her Dr. T. Nurses whispered that she had a gift, that children in her care seemed to fight harder, heal faster. But Teresa knew it wasn't magic. It was love. A love she carried for a child she never held. A love she poured into every small beating heart entrusted to her. She was not only saving lives, she was keeping a promise. And as the years stretched forward, Teresa Lang became more than a survivor. She became a legend. She married Daniel, a man with gentle hands and quiet strength. He was nothing like the storms of her past. Where others demanded, Daniel listened. Where others sought to control, he stood beside her, steady and unshakable. He never asked her to shrink herself, never dimmed her light to make his shine brighter. Instead, he marveled at it. He loved her brilliance, her fire, her scars, everything she once thought made her unlovable. So this is what safety feels like, Teresa often thought, lying in the crook of his arm at night. Not cages, not chains, but freedom. The kind you share with someone who never tries to hold you down. Their home bloomed with laughter when their son, Matteo, arrived. He had her stubborn chin, the same determined set of her jaw that once clenched against despair. But his eyes, those were Daniel's. Steady, thoughtful, and endlessly kind. In Matteo, Teresa saw both a continuation and a new beginning. A child not born of grief, but of love. A promise not of survival, but of flourishing. At night, when the world was hushed and her son's lashes rested against his cheeks, Matteo would ask her questions. Innocent, boundless questions. Mommy, what should I dream about? She would smile, pressing a kiss to his warm forehead, her voice soft but certain. Dream big, she whispered, and never settle for less. And in those moments, between the gentle hush of the night and the rhythm of her son's breathing, Teresa would feel the past slip further away. Ivan's near, the pain of loss, the shadows of fear. They no longer defined her. Because here, in the glow of love, she had built something greater than survival. She had built a family. She had built a life. This, she thought as she watched her son sleep, this is the future I fought for. The future no one can take from me. One day, her phone chimed. An anonymous tip. Just a link. Teresa almost ignored it until the headline burned across her screen. Ivan Korov arrested for fraud and tax evasion. Her eyes lingered only a moment longer, scanning the lines. Embezzlement. False accounts. Years of deceit finally dragged into the light. Rachel's name appeared, too abandoned, penniless, her social circle turned to dust, her reputation shredded. Once adored, now avoided. A woman with endless debts and no one left to carry them. Teresa's fingers hovered over the phone. She did not laugh. She did not smile. Because this was not her victory. With a steady breath, she closed the article and set the device face down on the table. The ghosts of the past had finally devoured themselves. She no longer needed to watch. From across the room, a different sound reached her. Want to help me fly to the moon, Mama? Mateo's voice, bright, insistent. He sat cross-legged in the middle of the living room, surrounded by cardboard scraps, colored tape, and the fierce determination of childhood dreams. His little hands pressed stickers onto a makeshift rocket ship that wobbled dangerously, but proudly stood tall. Teresa's heart softened instantly. She crossed the room, kneeling beside him, feeling the warmth of life that no betrayal, no cruelty, no darkness could ever erase. Always, she said, her voice low but certain. She reached out, steadying the rocket as Mateo grinned up at her, eyes alight with wonder. As she taped another cardboard wing into place, a thought rose quietly inside her, strong as steel and soft as prayer. This is my revenge. Not his ruin, not her fall. This. Not headlines, not karma. Her real revenge was here, in the safe laughter of her son, in the quiet strength of her home, in the rhythm of days filled with purpose and love. Her real revenge was living, truly living the life they had tried so hard to steal. And as Mateo climbed into his cardboard rocket, raising his arms as if to blast into the stars, Teresa knew with perfect clarity. She had already won. About us, contact us.